So I'm sure one of the things that we're all concerned about, and we're here for Peace Day, at another level, we're all concerned about the decline in trust in society. Christian and I were with some people at the UN yesterday or recently, and trust has declined to such a degree that only 30% of humanity, or certainly from their surveys, are trusting any institutions. So we're seeing a real breakdown in civic society around the world. That is obviously of concern to all of us. And I raise it because trust building is really the fundamental relationship between our organizations and either our customers or our suppliers. So are there things, Natalie, that you could tell us about, either with Avon or more generally, how do we build trust in this world where trust is disappearing so rapidly? What do we do about that?
It's so challenging. We've got this uber intense scrutiny, this mistrust, distrust, misinformation, and we've got really complicated issues that we're dealing with. In terms of whether we're looking at peace, whether we're looking at environmental sustainability, there isn't one simple answer. And there's a lot of complexity that lies around even choices, around things like packaging in terms of what's our most sustainable choice, what's the impact on carbon versus plastics in the ocean. So I honestly believe the best thing that we can do as organizations is to be transparent, to know what our core purpose is and to stick with that, and not to be opportunistic, because I think people sniff it a mile off. So I think if you can stay true to who you are, if you are genuinely plotting a course, whether it's around the journey to net zero, whether it's around circularity, whether it's around trying to end gender-based violence in our case, I think plotting that course, staying true to it, staying transparent and communicating is really important. And I think we all need to be really clear that social responsibility is a joined up effort that underpins what a company does. It isn't a communications effort. The communications follows the substance of the work that you're doing over time.
Yeah, fantastic. Michael, we prior to this call had a pre-conversation, and I didn't know the sort of packaging business you were in, and you said we're primarily in metal packaging. Yeah. And I immediately thought, wow, that sounds pretty unsustainable. But I'm wrong. So this is one of these issues, isn't it, about how do we get the message out? And I'll let you get the message out about metal packaging, but how do we get the message out to people who have got so many demands on their time and so many different messages and fake news and reports coming out? How do we get the right messages out to people?
Well, I think part of it is just being very transparent, and if you just think about metal packaging, metal packaging is the most recycled packaging out there. Over 60% of the packaging for metal is recycled. Metal recycles forever. Each time you recycle metal, it only uses 5% of the energy. And in fact, over the 75% of metal that's out there is still in use today and being reused, and reused. So, giving consumers that type of transparency so that they know, but also making it convenient for them to be able to recycle products. Now, I'm not here to say that metal packaging is the only answer. There's an answer for different substrates. There's a role for plastic, a role for paper, but it's looking at what is the right application, the right substrate for the right product and the right occasion, and then making sure that consumers are aware of what they need to do to protect that packaging throughout the life cycle and make sure that it gets reused or gets recycled. And ultimately, the best answer is to use as little packaging as possible. I know I say that I'm in the packaging business, but that's the truth. The truth of the matter is, if we can use less, if we can consume less, if we can waste less food. I mean, part of the reason why packaging is so beneficial is actually it protects products and food for a long period of time. Food in a metal can lasts for years. lasts up to 5 years. That's a huge benefit to reducing food waste. And you think about the challenges that we have right now with climate change. You hear about the record droughts, the biggest drought in 500 years in Europe, the droughts that are taking place in California and all parts of the world. The importance and water scarcity because of that. The ability to produce food is going to become more and more difficult. So making sure that we can preserve that food is going to become more and more important. So again, giving that transparency to consumers and making sure that consumers also hold those brands accountable, hold those companies accountable. For example, look at Russia, right? A big deal invading the Ukraine, totally wrong. What did companies do? They pulled out. A lot of companies pulled out. We pulled out. We were in Russia. So we did it because it's our value system. It's because we walk the talk and we want to be transparent and we want to do the right thing. So doing the right thing, not always easy, not always making the most economic sense, but the more you can be trustworthy, more transparent, the more that the world is going to start to believe in the right thing.
So Christian, this is difficult though, isn't it? Because let's face it, organizations, companies have spent, the last 100 years trying to persuade people to buy more, generally. And now we're trying to persuade people to conserve more and in some cases buy less. How do we do that? How do we have that conversation in a way that it actually builds trust, but also allows us to run profitable businesses that maintain employment and society generally? How do we do it? Is there an easy way we get there, or any thoughts?
There's never an easy way, but there's some golden rules, if I may say that. So, of course, we're talking about transparency, integrity, and trust. But the secret of trust is not to claim trust, but to earn trust.
Yeah.
And I think we have a kind of a generational advantage, because the next generation, I'm not naming them now because everybody's confused about that, but they're very explicit about asking the question about the why. So why are you in business, and how do you run your business? How do you conduct your business? The answer, I mentioned our purpose, but the additional answer we're giving ourselves is we have defined 3 principles on which we run our brand. And brand is basically the face of our business strategy. And those principles are shape, care, deliver. So, of course, we try to deliver on our promises. So we deliver value for what people are paying us for. Caring is about empathy. Very important these days to really engage on an emotional level and not just transactional. But the one which gets me most excited is shaping. So we really define shaping as shaping a better world together. It is part of our business model, but it is also part of looking at the world. And that's why we're partnering with Interbrand, with other brands, with the United Nations, and really trying to find an answer how to make people not only understand, but also act differently on that climate challenge we're all facing.
So a question for all of you, because Patagonia has been in the news recently for the founder of Patagonia essentially giving the company away, a $3 billion company, which was always private. It never had the pressure of the shareholder. Has that set a useful precedent for companies, or is it put companies that are on the stock markets around the world under more pressure? Because I even in the halls of Interbrand, people are talking about Patagonia. What an amazing thing that was! What an act of generosity to put all that money to work for the climate. But what is that saying to comments within your organizations, and how are you dealing with those comments? Any input on that particular issue?
Well, I just think that it ups the stakes for the whole corporate sector, right? When you have a company that has done, a founder that has done such an amazing act for the world, for the planet, it just embodies how important it is for each company to make sure that it's playing its part and doing what's right for the planet to protect the future. Now, some companies are a lot further ahead than others, but what that's going to do is you're sparking that conversation that's taken place. They may not have bought Patagonia products before, but it's hitting the headlines and people are really thinking, is that something, what should we do as a corporation that really takes it to the next level?
So Natalie, I don't know if you have any comments on this, but I kind of wonder, is this going to push companies to move faster and further, as certainly the pressure grows up within your organization and staff saying, come on, we need to show even more social purpose. What are your thoughts on this?
Oh, I hope so. I mean, I just think, it's such an amazing example of putting your money where your mouth is, wasn't it? Absolutely incredible. And of course, we're not going to see a whole host of other founders do that overnight. But I think, as we've heard, it really sets the tone. And actually, we want to hear from our employees, our representatives and our customers about this. We want them to continue voicing their expectations, to ask us to help deliver, whether it's sustainable solutions or more support for women. Because I think there's this, there's a pull from many of our communities, but equally, we touched on it a little bit earlier, we've still, as an organisation, got a really important part to play in helping to educate people to make sustainable choices. I fundamentally believe everybody wants to do the right thing, but they don't always know how to do it. So, I welcome the challenge, and we want to kind of join up with others to get there and deliver.
You mentioned the word education there, Natalie. I want to jump over to Christian to talk about the work that we're doing as an alliance together to try and take on the engagement, enabling, and education issue around climate change. So, Christian, tell us a little bit about that. Tell the audience a little bit about what we're trying to do.
Oh, we have set ourselves just a minor ambition. The next couple of years, we want to reach basically, the world population, 8 billion people, and that's probably the most important thing, simple messages, because everybody has heard about climate change. We are talking about it. There's the Paris Agreement. Everybody might have heard about the 1.5 degrees, but what does it really mean? And I mean, there are amazing institutions out there. And it's not to say that governments, the United Nations, they're not doing enough, but maybe sometimes it's too difficult to digest and to decode and to turn it into personal actions. So ultimately, we want to, talk about that topic in a simple way, in a convincing way, but ultimately we want to achieve behavioral change and stimulate, drive action on an individual level. Every little helps. This is like the kind of line I like most in this. But I can tell you it's anything but trivial because we're talking about stakeholders, different interests. Ultimately, we need to apply all the principles of branding, which is, providing orientation, identification, trust, but conveying messages in a simple way.
Thank you, Christian. Michael, any thoughts about how we speed this up? How do we speed up both the trust building and getting the right messages out there? I mean, I'm sure you're involved in collaborative efforts in the packaging world, because when we all talk as individuals or as companies, it gets very confusing because everyone's got slightly different claims. Is there something going on in your industry that is trying to educate the end user?
Well, I think it starts with conveying the importance of recycling and sustainability, making sure that people are starts with, when they consume their product, when it's finished, what do they do with the container? And making sure that it's providing that clarity to them. Which bin does it go into? Does it go in with everything else, or do you put it into this bin or that bin? Some localities can recycle certain products, others can't. And that creates a lot of confusion out there. And so the important piece is, how do you make sure that each consumer, wherever they're at, has that simple mindset of what they need to do with that product when they're finished with it? What can they do to play a role to make a more sustainable world?
Natalie, we're running out of time here, and I want to come to you finally, because I want to hear a little bit about the amazing work that you're doing with women and empowerment of women. Just one or two of the things that Avon is doing.
Sure, thanks for that. I think it's a common theme. It's about mobilizing people, isn't it? So we have 5 million representatives, 5 million Avon ladies across the world. And one of the most important things that we can do is help to mobilize that group of people, because as we've heard, individual actions can make an enormous change. So whether it's around making sustainable choices about what they do with their shower gel after they've finished with it, or whether it's about how they can speak out on social issues. So for us, one of the reasons we became involved with Peace One Day is because we believe in the power of mobilizing individuals to speak out. And I think if we do just one thing today, if we can all make sure we are simply speaking out, raising awareness of the need for peace, we can all work together to help build that more sustainable world. So we at Avon will stay committed. We continue to donate to our network of 30 plus charities around the world, supporting women who are impacted by violence. We continue to make sure we're creating opportunities for women to earn and learn at the core of our model, and we're working with others to do that. But really the most important things that we can all do on a day like today is making sure that we're speaking out and speaking up for peace.
Well, I just want to thank all of our panel members, Natalie, Michael, and Christian. This has been a fascinating discussion. Thank you for joining us, and thanks once again to Peace One Day. Jeremy Gilley is a brilliant example of what one man can do, or one person can do. I feel enormously optimistic when I look at someone like Jeremy, and when I look at the next generation who care deeply about these matters. So I'm sure we all agree with that. And thanks again for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.